They told me my late grandmother left nothing but a locked pantry. What I found inside changed everything. That's the story I'm going to tell you, but before I get into the dust and the secrets and the cold, hard cash, I want to ask you to be here for it. If you've ever felt like you were on the outside looking in, if you've ever been handed a life you didn't choose, this story is for you. So subscribe, stick around, and let me know in the comments if any of this feels familiar. Because the day it all started was the day I was supposed to be free, but I'd never felt more locked up. My 18th birthday began with the smell of institutional bleach and the sound of a key in a lock. Not the sound of a door being opened for me, but the sound of my file being locked away for the last time. 2 years, 6 months, and 14 days. That's how long I'd been in the system since Gran died. 2 years of scheduled meals, mandatory group therapy sessions where we all lied about our progress, and the constant, humming anxiety of knowing you were a line item in a county budget. Freedom, when it finally came, didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like an eviction. Brenda, my caseworker for the final 6 months, had a face permanently arranged in an expression of mild disappointment. She held a single manila envelope in her hands like it was a dead bird. "Happy birthday, Leo," she said, the words falling flat in the sterile air of her office. The beige walls seemed to absorb all emotion. "You're officially aged out. All your paperwork is finalized." I stood there in my state-issued jeans and a hoodie I'd had for 3 years, the fabric thin at the elbows. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. Thank you for the trauma? See you never? I just nodded. "We've arranged for a final bus token and your last stipend payment," she continued, sliding a thin debit card across the desk. It had my name on it, a name that felt like it belonged to someone else. Leo Maxwell. The boy in the files. "It's not much, but it should get you through the first week or so while you find your feet." Find my feet. The phrase hung in the air. I imagined my feet, disconnected from my body, trying to walk away from this place on their own. Maybe they'd be smarter than I was. "And this," she said, pushing the manila envelope forward. It was thicker than I expected, and it had the name of a law firm printed in the corner, Albright and Jones. "This was left in our care, from your grandmother's estate. It was to be given to you on your 18th birthday. My breath caught. Gran. For 2 years, she had been a ghost, a memory so painful I had to pack it away. They told me she died with nothing. Debts, a foreclosed house, the whole sad story. The state had stepped in because there was no one and nothing left for me. "Her estate?" I asked, my voice raspy. Brenda gave a little sigh, a puff of weary air. "Don't get your hopes up, Leo. I made the call as required. It's just formalities. According to my notes, the estate is insolvent. That means the debts are greater than the assets. There's nothing to inherit. But the lawyer, a Mr. Albright, insisted you be given his contact information. A formality." A formality. Like happy birthday and find your feet. I took the envelope. The paper was thick, expensive. It felt alien in my hand. Inside was a single, crisply folded letter. It was from the lawyer, a formal summons to his office to discuss the final disposition of the estate of Eleanor Maxwell. Disposition. Another one of those words. A word for throwing things away. "There's a bus that leaves for Coldwater Creek at noon," Brenda said, already turning back to her computer, my file already a closed case on her screen. "His office is in town there. You should go. Tie up the loose ends." I spent my first hour of freedom sitting on a hard plastic bench at the bus station, the manila envelope on my lap. The stipend card was in my pocket, a cold, thin rectangle of possibility. I could have gone anywhere. I could have bought a ticket in the opposite direction, found a city, and tried to disappear into the noise. Tried to become someone who wasn't Leo Maxwell, the orphan, the ward of the state. But the envelope was a weight, a pull. Coldwater Creek. I hadn't heard that name since I was a kid, a name tied to the smell of pine needles and damp earth and Gran's baking. It was the place I was taken from, the place where everything had ended. Maybe, I thought, it's where I needed to begin. I bought a one-way ticket. The bus groaned out of the city, leaving the gray buildings and the beige offices behind. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and watched the world I knew vanish, holding on to an envelope that promised nothing but a formality, a final loose end to be tied and thrown away. But it was the only thing I had. The offices of Albright and Jones were on the second floor of the only brick building on Coldwater Creek's sleepy Main Street. The stairs creaked a mournful protest under my worn-out boots. The air in the hallway smelled of dust and old paper and something vaguely like cinnamon. A frosted glass door read, "Arthur Albright, Attorney at Law." The "and Jones" had been scraped off, but you could still see the ghost of the letters. The man who greeted me was as old as the building. Arthur Albright was a tall, stooped man in a tweed jacket that had seen better decades. His white hair was thin, and his face was a road map of wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and clear behind his spectacles. He looked at me, then at the envelope I was still clutching. "Mr. Maxwell," he said, his voice a low, calm rumble. "I'm glad you came. Please." He gestured to a worn leather chair that sighed as I sat down. The office was a testament to a long career. Bookshelves overflowed. Files were stacked in precarious towers on every available surface, and a film of dust lay over everything except the polished surface of his large wooden desk. He sat down opposite me, folding his hands. He didn't smile, but he didn't look unkind. He just looked patient. "Brenda, your caseworker, she called," I said, feeling the need to explain my presence. "She did," he confirmed. "She informed me, in a rather brisk fashion, that the state's interest in your welfare has officially concluded. She also informed me that she told you there was nothing here for you." He paused, his gaze unwavering. She was, in the strictest legal sense, correct. She was also, in a more human sense, entirely wrong. I didn't know what to say to that. I just waited. "Your grandmother, Eleanor," he began, and the sound of her name in this quiet room made my chest ache. "She was a client of mine for many years, a very determined woman. When she passed, the state moved very quickly. They assessed her property, saw the outstanding mortgage and the property tax arrears, and declared the estate insolvent. They were eager to wash their hands of the matter." He leaned forward slightly. "What they failed to appreciate was the difference between a house and a home. To them, the property at 240 Black Pine Road was a liability, a dilapidated structure on an overgrown plot of land saddled with debt. They valued it at less than the amount owed. This was the story I knew, the story that had sent me to the group home. A few months ago," he continued, steepling his fingers, "I was contacted by a representative from a development group, North Ridge Properties. They've been buying up land on the outskirts of town. They want to build a gated community, a golf course. They made an offer on your grandmother's property. A flicker of something, not hope, but curiosity, stirred in me. An offer? Yes. They offered to buy the land, clear all outstanding debts, and leave a small remainder. After my fees, it would have amounted to approximately $5,000 for you. $5,000. To me, right then, that might as well have been $5 million. It was a ticket to a new life, a real one. So, I get $5,000? Mr. Albright held up a hand. I said they made an offer. I have not accepted it. Per your grandmother's final instructions, I was to hold all offers until you came of age and could be presented with the choice yourself. You can accept their offer. I will handle the paperwork. You will sign where I tell you to, and you will walk out of here with a check. You would be free and clear. It is the sensible, practical thing to do. The way he said sensible made it sound like an insult. Or? I asked. He leaned back, his chair creaking. Or you can decline their offer, in which case the property and all the debt attached to it becomes yours. You would owe the bank nearly $30,000 for the mortgage and the county another $5,000 for back taxes. You would have 90 days to either pay it or arrange a new loan before foreclosure proceedings would begin. You would own a worthless property that would in all likelihood be seized and sold at auction, leaving you with nothing. It is the insensible, impractical thing to do. He let the two options hang in the air between us. One was a clean break, a small fortune that could change my life. The other was a trap, a dead end, a burden I couldn't possibly carry. It was an easy choice. It was no choice at all. Why would I do that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why would I choose the debt? That, Mr. Albright said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, is a question only you can answer. Your grandmother was very specific. You were to be given the choice. But she also left you this. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, tarnished brass key. It was an old-fashioned skeleton key, the kind I'd only seen in movies. He pushed it across the desk. It slid to a stop right in front of me. What's this for? Your grandmother's instructions had one very peculiar, very specific addendum, the lawyer said, his eyes twinkling with something that looked like amusement. She stipulated that I was to inform you that she had left you the contents of the pantry. The door is locked. This is the key. I stared at him. The pantry? After all this, the big secret was a key to a pantry in a house that was about to be taken by the bank? I felt a surge of bitter disappointment, so sharp it tasted like acid. It was a joke, a cruel, pointless joke played on a kid who had nothing. All that way on the bus, all that fragile hope I hadn't even let myself acknowledge for a pantry. The pantry, I repeated, the words flat. The pantry, he confirmed. She was very clear. Everything else, the house, the land, the debt, is a circumstance. The pantry, she said, is the inheritance. I picked up the key. It was heavy in my palm, the metal cool against my skin. It felt real. More real than the $5,000 I couldn't see. More real than the crushing debt I couldn't comprehend. It was a key to a pantry. It was absurd. It was illogical. It was the only thing that felt like it came directly from her, a final, cryptic message across time. A part of me wanted to laugh, another part wanted to cry. I looked from the key in my hand to the lawyer's patient, waiting face. The sensible choice was the money. The practical choice was to sign the papers and walk away. But for 2 years, my life had been nothing but sensible, practical choices made for me by other people. This choice, this stupid, illogical, impossible choice, this one was mine. The bus ride to Coldwater Creek was a journey through a landscape of fading memories. The city's gray sprawl slowly gave way to suburbs, then to stretches of farmland, and finally to the dense, dark woods I remembered from childhood. I sat with my forehead pressed against the vibrating window, watching the trees flash by, a green and brown blur. Each mile brought a strange mix of dread and a feeling I could only describe as coming home, even if it was a home that no longer wanted me. I had Mr. Albright's words echoing in my head, the two paths laid out before me like a cruel joke. Take the money and run, or take the debt and a key to a pantry. I held the small brass key in my pocket, my fingers wrapped around it. It was a tangible link to her, to a past I'd tried so hard to forget because it hurt too much to remember. I remembered her hands, calloused from her garden, but always gentle. I remembered the smell of her kitchen, a mix of yeast and cinnamon and soil. I remembered her telling me stories about the trees, how they whispered to each other when the wind blew. The state, in its sterile efficiency, had told me she was a failure, a woman who couldn't manage her finances, who died and left her only grandson to the mercy of the system. But that wasn't the woman I remembered. The woman I remembered was a fighter. She was the one who taught me how to tie my shoes, how to read the clouds, how to be quiet and listen to the world around me. Could that woman really have left me with nothing but a final, bitter punchline? The bus shuddered to a stop in the center of town. "Coldwater Creek," the driver called out. I was the only one who got off. The town was just as I remembered it, only smaller, sadder. The paint on the storefronts was peeling, and a few had "For Lease" signs taped in the windows. It was a place time was slowly forgetting. I shouldered my single backpack, which contained everything I owned in the world, and started walking. Black Pine Road was at the edge of town, where the pavement gave way to gravel. The walk was about a mile, and with each step, the silence grew deeper, broken only by the crunch of my boots and the cawing of a distant crow. The air grew cooler, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Then I saw it. The house was set back from the road, half swallowed by an overgrown garden. The mailbox, with Maxwell painted on the side in my grandmother's neat script, was leaning at a drunken angle. The fence had collapsed in several places, and weeds choked what used to be a lawn. The house itself was small, a simple wooden structure with a porch that sagged in the middle. The paint was peeling, the windows were dark and vacant, and a shutter hung from a single hinge, banging softly in the breeze. It looked exactly like what Mr. Albright had described, a liability. It looked abandoned. But as I stood there, a funny thing happened. The longer I looked, the more I saw. I saw the sturdy stone foundation that Gran's father had laid. I saw the big oak tree in the yard, the one with the tire swing I'd spent a whole summer on. I saw the porch where Gran and I would sit in the evenings, watching the fireflies. It wasn't a liability. It was my history. The front door was locked, of course, but Gran had always said that locks were for honest people. She'd also taught me where she kept the spare key. I reached up, my fingers brushing away a thick spider web from the top of the door frame. And there it was, a small, rusty house key tucked into a little hollow. My heart gave a painful lurch. She hadn't changed it. The key turned in the lock with a rusty shriek. I pushed the door open, and it swung inward on a long, slow creak. I stepped inside. The air was thick and still and cold, carrying the scent of dust, decay, and faintly of my grandmother's lavender sachets. A sheet of dust covered every surface like a fine gray snow. In the dim light filtering through the grimy windows, I could see the outlines of the furniture, all draped in white sheets like a room full of ghosts. The silence was absolute. It was the sound of a life that had simply stopped. I walked through the small living room, my boots leaving clear prints in the dust. I touched the sheet covering her favorite armchair, the fabric rough beneath my fingers. I saw the stack of books on the mantelpiece, the faint outline of the family photos that the state must have taken and filed away somewhere. Every object was a memory, every shadow a ghost. I felt like an intruder in my own past. I moved from the living room to the kitchen. It was the heart of the house, the place she had spent most of her time. The counters were clear, the sink was empty. It was unnervingly clean, as if she had been expecting to leave. My eyes scanned the room, and then I saw it. On the far wall, between the back door and the stove. A simple wooden door, painted the same pale yellow as the kitchen walls. It had no doorknob, only a small, dark keyhole. The pantry. It looked so ordinary, so small. It was impossible to believe that the answer to my future, the choice between $5,000 and $35,000 of debt, was waiting behind that door. I stood before it for a long time, just looking. The weight of the moment felt immense. This was it, the reason I had come all this way. I reached into my pocket, my fingers closing around the cold, heavy brass key. It felt like it was humming with a strange energy. I took a deep breath, the dusty air filling my lungs. Then I slid the key into the lock. The pantry door stood before me like a silent judge. The brass key Mr. Albright had given me felt impossibly heavy, a small weight of destiny in my trembling hand. I hesitated, my mind racing. What could possibly be in a pantry that was worth more than $5,000? Old jars of pickles? Bags of flour gone to weevils? It was insane. The sensible part of my brain, the part that had been trained by 2 years of institutional living, screamed at me to turn around, walk back to town, call the lawyer, and take the money. Take the money, Leo. Start over. Forget this place. But I couldn't. My grandmother wasn't a cruel woman. She wasn't one for elaborate, pointless jokes. Whatever was behind this door, she had intended for me to find it. She had trusted me to find it. I owed it to her memory and to the scared, lonely boy I used to be, to see this through. I slid the key into the lock. It was a perfect fit. I turned it. The mechanism inside was stiff from disuse, and it took more force than I expected. With a loud, protesting clunk, the lock turned over. The sound echoed in the dead-still house. For a moment, I just stood there, my hand on the key, my heart pounding in my ears. Then, I pulled the key out, took hold of the edge of the door, and pulled. It was stuck fast, the wood swollen in the damp air. I had to plant my feet and lean back, putting my whole body into it. With a groaning screech of wood against wood, the door scraped open a few inches. A wave of cool, dry air washed over me, smelling not of food or decay, but of old paper, cardboard, and something else. Something clean and metallic. The smell of money. I squeezed through the opening and fumbled along the wall for a light switch. My fingers found a simple pull chain. I yanked it. A bare bulb flickered to life, casting a weak yellow glow over the space. It wasn't a pantry. There were no shelves of canned goods, no sacks of potatoes, no hanging braids of garlic. The walls were bare wood. The space was small, no bigger than a closet, but it was packed from floor to ceiling with boxes, dozens of them. They were all identical, plain brown cardboard banker's boxes, neatly sealed with packing tape. Each one had a number written on the side in my grandmother's familiar, elegant handwriting. Number 1, number 2, all the way up to a number I couldn't see at the top of the stack. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a pantry. It was a vault, a meticulously organized, hidden vault. My eyes fell on the box at the front of the stack on the floor, the one labeled number 1. It seemed to be calling to me. Kneeling on the dusty floorboards, I used my house key to slit the packing tape. The sound was loud in the small space. I lifted the flaps. My breath itched. The box was filled with cash. Neat, tight bundles of $20 bills held together with simple rubber bands. There were dozens of bundles. I reached in and lifted one. It was real. It was crisp. I fanned the edges with my thumb. It was more money than I had ever seen in my entire life. I looked back in the box. There had to be tens of thousands of dollars here, just in this one box. My head spun. Where did this come from? How? My grandmother was supposed to be poor, broke, in debt. This didn't make any sense. Then I saw it. Tucked into the side of the box was a thick, cream-colored envelope with my name, Leo, written on the front. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick it up. I tore it open. Inside were several pages filled with her handwriting. "My dearest Leo," it began. I had to stop. I leaned my head back against the wall of boxes, the bare bulb glaring above me, and closed my eyes. I could hear her voice in the words, as clear as if she were standing right next to me. I took a shaky breath and started again. "My dearest Leo, if you are reading this, then it means several things. It means I am gone. It means you have survived the world without me for a time. And it means you have come home. For all of those things, I am both sorry and proud. I am so, so proud of you. I know what they told you. They told you I left you with nothing. In a way, they were right. I left you with no easy inheritance, no simple check to cash. I left you with a choice. I see you have made the first part of it correctly. You chose the key. You chose to trust me. That was the first and most important test. The world is a complicated place, Leo. It is not always kind to people like us, people who value the land and the quiet things. There are forces, big, loud, greedy forces, that want to swallow everything up. I have spent the last 10 years of my life fighting one of those forces. They wanted this land, our land. They tried to bully me, to scare me, to price me out. They did not succeed. I knew I would not live forever. I knew that one day I would have to leave you, and the thought broke my heart. But I also knew that if I left you a simple fortune, it would be a curse, not a blessing. Money without purpose is a poison. And the people who want this land would have found a way to take it from you, just as they tried to take it from me. So I made a plan, a long, difficult plan. This pantry is the heart of it. It is my love for you made practical. For years I have been saving. Every spare dollar from my pension, every penny I earned selling vegetables at the farmer's market, every dime I saved by living simply. I did not put it in a bank. Banks leave a paper trail. Banks can be frozen, seized. Instead, I put it here. In this box, you will find $40,000. It is enough to pay off the mortgage and the back taxes completely. It is enough to make this house and this land yours, free and clear, forever. This is your first choice, Leo. You can take this money. You can walk back into Mr. Albright's office, pay off the debts, and this home will be yours. Or you can take this money and disappear. You can buy a new life somewhere else and never look back. No one would blame you. The money is yours, a gift with no strings attached. But if you choose to stay, know that this is only the beginning. This pantry holds more than just money. It holds the whole story. The choice is yours. Whatever you decide, know that I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Always. Gran. I finished the letter and the papers slipped from my fingers. I looked at the box of money. $40,000. The solution to all my problems. The key to my future. I sat there on the floor of the secret pantry, surrounded by a fortune I never knew existed. And I began to cry. I cried for the grandmother I had lost, and for the one I was just beginning to find. The tears came in a hot, silent rush. I didn't sob or make a sound. I just sat on the cold floor of the pantry, the bare bulb buzzing overhead, and let the grief I had been holding back for 2 years finally break through the dam. I cried for the loss of my grandmother, for the lonely nights in the group home, for the boy who had to grow up too fast. And I cried for her, for the woman who had spent the last decade of her life living in poverty, scrimping and saving, all while fighting a secret war, just to give me a chance. She had been called a failure, insolvent, a burden. The truth was, she was a warrior. The air in the pantry was thick with the smell of old paper and money. The $40,000 sat in its box, a silent, powerful testament to her love and her sacrifice. It was an impossible sum, a magic wand that could erase my past and create a new future. The temptation was immense, a physical pull. I could take it. I could walk out of this dusty, ghost-filled house, away from the debts and the complications. I could go to a city, get an apartment, go to college, become someone new. Someone without a past, without a file in a social services office. Someone normal. I picked up a bundle of 20s. It felt heavy, dense. It was freedom. It was safety. It was everything I had never had. And yet, as I held it, my eyes fell on the other boxes, stacked high in the small room. Number 2, number 3, number 4, all the way up. Her letter had been clear. This is only the beginning. This pantry holds more than just money. It holds the whole story. What story? What else could there be? She had given me the solution. Pay the debts, own the house, or take the money and run. But the existence of those other boxes was a question mark, an open loop. It suggested that paying off the debt wasn't the end of the story, but the start of a different one, a harder one. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads in the dark. One path was brightly lit by the glow of $40,000, leading to an easy, anonymous future. The other path led deeper into the shadows of this old house, into the heart of my grandmother's secrets. It was a path paved with questions. Who were they? The big, loud, greedy forces she wrote about? Why did they want this specific patch of land so badly? What was in the other boxes? Listen, if you've ever been at a point in your life where you were offered an easy way out, you know what I was feeling. That pull to just let go of the struggle, to take the win and walk away. It's a powerful thing. And maybe you have a story about a time you took that easy path, or a time you chose the harder one. I'd be honored if you shared it in the comments below. Because in that moment, I felt so alone, caught between two impossible choices. Reading your stories helps me and everyone here feel a little less alone in our own struggles. This community we're building is about sharing those moments, the hard choices that define us. So thank you for being here and for sharing. I sat there for what felt like hours, the world shrinking to the confines of that small, secret room. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a profound and aching clarity. Running away with the money would be a betrayal, not just of Gran, but of myself. For 2 years I had been powerless, a passenger in my own life. I was told where to sleep, what to eat, who to be. My grandmother hadn't just left me money, she had left me agency. She had left me a choice that was truly mine. To take the money and run would be to revert to that old, powerless self, to let fear make my decisions for me. To stay was terrifying. It meant embracing the debt before I could pay it. It meant taking on a fight I didn't understand, against an enemy I couldn't see. It meant choosing this broken-down house, this forgotten town, this legacy of struggle. It meant becoming the guardian of her story. I looked at her handwriting again, the elegant loops and strong, determined strokes. I am so proud of you. No one had said that to me in 2 years. No one. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't the boy who ran away. I was Eleanor Maxwell's grandson, and I was home. My decision settled not with a bang, but with a quiet click, like a key turning in a lock. I was staying. I was going to see this through to the end. I carefully placed the bundle of money back in the box and closed the flaps. I wouldn't touch it, not yet. The money was for the debt, for the house. It was a tool, not a prize. First, I needed to understand. I reread Gran's letter, my eyes scanning for clues. This pantry holds more than just money. It holds the whole story. My gaze drifted from box number 1 to the one next to it, box number 2. It was sealed just as tightly. If her plan was as meticulous as it seemed, there had to be a logic to it, a sequence. I took a deep breath and used my key to slice open box number 2. My heart was pounding, but this time it was with anticipation, not fear. I lifted the flaps. This box wasn't full of cash. It was full of paper. On top lay another envelope, this one simply marked, Leo, Part 2. I opened it. "My brave boy," the letter began. "You stayed. I knew you would. Your heart is too good, and your spirit is too curious to walk away from a mystery. That is my blood in you. Now, the real work begins. The money in the first box is your shield. It will protect the home. But the contents of this box are your sword. It will help you fight. The company that wants this land is North Ridge Properties. They are a subsidiary of a much larger, more powerful corporation. They present themselves as legitimate developers, but their methods are anything but. They prey on the elderly, the indebted, the vulnerable. They find small landowners like me, people with deep roots but shallow pockets. And they begin a campaign of attrition. They offer a lowball price. When it's refused, the problems start. Property lines are suddenly disputed. Anonymous complaints are filed with the county about code violations. Taxes are mysteriously reassessed at a higher rate. It is a slow, methodical strangulation. They want you to feel so overwhelmed, so hopeless, that when they come back with their original lowball offer, it feels like a rescue. I did not break, but I knew they were counting on me not being here forever. They are patient. They are waiting for this land to fall into the hands of someone who doesn't know its value. Someone who will see only the debt and the disrepair. They are waiting for someone who will take the quick, easy money. They are not expecting you. In this box, you will find everything. Every threatening letter they sent me. Every registered letter I sent them that was returned unopened. Every photograph I took of the surveyors who were trespassing on my land. Every complaint I filed with the sheriff's office that was subsequently lost. I also kept a journal. It details every phone call, every visit, every veiled threat. It is a complete record of their harassment. It is my testimony. But there is more. Look deeper. Your grandfather, a man you never had the chance to meet, was a geologist. He loved this land as much as I do. Before he passed, he did a comprehensive geological survey of this property. He found something valuable. The original survey maps are hidden. They are not in this box. They are not in this house. Look in the journal, page 47. She always loved the rain. Go forward, Leo. Be smart. Be brave. I am with you, Gran. I put the letter down, my mind reeling. A campaign of harassment, a lost geological survey, a secret in the land itself. This was so much bigger than a simple property dispute. I rummaged through the box. It was exactly as she described. A thick, leather-bound journal, folders of documents, dated photographs. It was a meticulously compiled case file, a declaration of war. I grabbed the journal and flipped to page 47. The entry was dated 5 years ago. Most of it was a description of the weather, a summer thunderstorm. But at the bottom of the page, she had written a short, cryptic sentence. The storm passes, but the well remembers. She always loved the rain. Check the lining. The well. I remembered the old stone well at the back of the property. It had been covered with heavy wooden planks for as long as I could remember, deemed unsafe. She always loved the rain. I thought for a moment. It didn't make sense. And then it hit me. Not she. She was capitalized in the journal. It wasn't a person. It was a name. I scrambled out of the pantry and into the living room, pulling the dusty sheet off a small bookshelf. And there it was. A slim volume of poetry by an author named Genevieve Rain. I pulled it from the shelf. It was a book of my grandmother's, one she used to read to me. I opened it. Taped inside the front cover was a small, strange-looking key. It wasn't a house key or a pantry key. It was small and silver. a key to a safe deposit box. Tucked behind it was a small slip of paper with a number. I had my shield, now I had my sword, and I had a map to the next piece of the puzzle. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. Armed with a new sense of purpose, I spent the rest of the day in a flurry of activity. The house, which had felt like a tomb, now felt like a headquarters, a base of operations. I carried the journal and the box of documents from the pantry into the living room, laying everything out on the sheet-draped coffee table. It was an arsenal of paper. First, I needed to establish a beachhead against the immediate threat, the debt. I found an old, dusty telephone in the kitchen. Miraculously, after I reconnected a wire that had been pulled from the wall, it had a dial tone. My first call was to Mr. Albright. He answered on the second ring, his voice as calm and steady as ever. "Mr. Albright's office?" "Mr. Albright, it's Leo Maxwell." There was a slight pause. "Leo, I was wondering if I would hear from you. Have you had time to consider the offer from Northridge Properties? They are persistent." "I'm not taking their offer," I said, the words feeling solid and real as I spoke them. "I'm keeping the house." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear the faint rustle of papers on his end. "Leo," he said, his tone shifting slightly. It was no longer just patient. There was a new note of professional concern. "As we discussed, that course of action comes with significant financial liabilities. You would have 90 days. "I know," I interrupted, a surge of confidence flowing through me. "And I'll be in your office tomorrow morning to settle the accounts. In full." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I think it was the first time I had ever left Arthur Albright speechless. "Settle them?" he finally managed. "Leo, we're talking about nearly $35,000. "I'm aware of the amount," I said, enjoying this a little too much. "I'll bring cash." "Cash," he repeated, the words sounding foreign in his mouth. "I see. Well, that is unexpected. Very well. My office at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We will proceed." He sounded flustered, and it gave me a small, private thrill. I was no longer the helpless kid in his office. I was a client with instructions. After the call, I turned my attention to the journal and the box of evidence. I spent hours reading. I read my grandmother's account of the men in suits who came to her door, their smiles thin and their eyes cold. I read about her prize-winning roses mysteriously dying overnight, the soil testing positive for a commercial-grade herbicide. I read about the sudden, inexplicable property line dispute with a neighbor who had been her friend for 30 years, a dispute that was quietly funded by an anonymous third party. I looked at the photos she had taken with a long-lens camera, blurry images of men in unmarked trucks near the edge of her property in the dead of night. It was a chilling narrative of psychological warfare, waged against a lone, elderly woman. With each page, my sorrow turned to a cold, hard anger. They hadn't just wanted her land. They had tried to break her spirit. They had underestimated her, and now they were underestimating me. The next morning, I walked into town with my backpack. This time it wasn't filled with my meager belongings, but with $40,000 in cash. It felt like carrying a bomb. I walked into Mr. Albright's office at 8:59 a.m. He was waiting for me. He had cleared a space on his desk, a gesture that seemed monumental in the cluttered office. I didn't say a word. I just unzipped the backpack and began stacking the bundles of $20 bills on his polished desk. His eyes widened, but his expression remained professionally placid. He counted it, twice. "This is correct," he said, looking at me with a completely new expression. It was respect. "This covers the outstanding mortgage principal, all accrued interest, and the county tax arrears, with a few thousand to spare." He immediately got on the phone, his voice a low, authoritative hum, as he spoke to people at the bank and the county tax office. He was a different man from the gentle, pitying lawyer I had met before. This was a shark, and he was my shark. By noon, it was done. Wires were sent. Faxes were received. He handed me a stack of receipts stamped, "Paid in full." "The property at 240 Black Pine Road is now yours, Leo Maxwell," he announced, the formality of it ringing with the weight of victory. "Free of all liens and encumbrances." I felt a wave of relief so profound it almost made my knees buckle. The house was safe. It was mine. "Now," I said, sliding box number 2 across the desk towards him, "let's talk about Northridge Properties." He spent the next hour poring over the contents of the box. He read the journal. He examined the photographs. He cross-referenced the dates of the threatening letters with the dates of the anonymous complaints. His face grew grim. "This is a textbook case of predatory acquisition tactics," he said, his voice tight with anger. "It's difficult to prove. They're careful to keep their hands clean. But this," he tapped the journal, "this is a contemporaneous record. Eleanor was a meticulous record keeper. This is powerful." I then told him about the other clue, the book of poetry, the safe deposit box key. I laid it on the desk between us. He picked it up and examined it. "First National Bank in Claremont. That's the next county over. A 40-minute drive." He looked at me, his eyes sharp. "Your grandmother was a very, very smart woman. She diversified her assets and her secrets. She didn't put all her eggs in one basket." He leaned back in his chair. "So, Northridge will soon find out that the property is no longer in distress. The debt is cleared. Their leverage is gone. They will likely come back with a higher offer now, a legitimate one. We could entertain it." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not selling. I want to know what's in that safe deposit box. I want to know what they were really after." A slow smile spread across Arthur Albright's face. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said. "I'll call the bank and make an appointment. As the executor of the estate and your legal counsel, I can get you access." He stood up and extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, his palm dry. "Welcome home, Leo. Now, the real work begins." The feeling of owning something, truly owning it, was foreign and intoxicating. Walking back to the house that afternoon with the paid-in-full receipts in my pocket, I felt taller. The air seemed cleaner, the colors of the forest brighter. The house, when it came into view, no longer looked like a liability. It looked like a fortress. My fortress. I spent the next few days in a state of purposeful motion. I bought groceries in town, and the woman at the checkout, a kind-faced lady named Carol, remembered my grandmother. "Eleanor's grandson," she'd said, her eyes crinkling. "My, you've grown. It's good to have a Maxwell back in that house." It was a small thing, but it felt like the first thread of connection to this place, this community. I started cleaning the house. I pulled the sheets off the furniture, letting the ghosts out. I opened the windows, chasing out the stale air and letting the scent of pine and sunshine pour in. I scrubbed floors, washed windows, and battled dust bunnies the size of small animals. With every bit of work, the house felt less like her shrine and more like my home. But even as I worked, my mind was on the future, on the appointment at the bank in Claremont. Mr. Albright had arranged it for the following week. In the meantime, he was doing his own digging into Northridge properties, using the information from Grand's journal as a starting point. We were a team. The day of the bank appointment, Mr. Albright picked me up in his ancient but immaculate Volvo. The drive to Claremont was quiet, the landscape rolling by. We were two soldiers heading into a new theater of operations. The bank was a modern glass and steel building that felt out of place in the small city. Inside, the air was cold and silent. We were led by a bank manager into the vault. The door was a massive circle of polished steel, a piece of engineering that screamed security. It felt like we were entering the heart of a pyramid. The manager used his key, and I used the small silver key from the book of poetry. A long, narrow metal box slid out. He placed it on a table in a private viewing room and left us, closing the door behind him. "The moment of truth," Mr. Albright said softly. I lifted the lid. Inside, there was no money. There was no jewelry. There was just a single, thick, rolled-up tube of drafting paper, tied with a faded red ribbon, and another one of my grandmother's letters. I untied the ribbon and carefully unrolled the tube on the table. It was a map, a detailed, hand-drawn geological survey map of our property. It was covered in my grandfather's precise, technical handwriting, with notes on soil composition, water tables, and rock strata. In the center of the map, corresponding to a section of land at the back of the property near the old well, was a large area circled in red. Inside the circle was a single word, followed by a series of numbers and chemical symbols. Lithium. I looked at Mr. Albright. He was staring at the map, his mouth slightly open. "Lithium," he breathed. "Of course." I didn't understand. "What's so important about lithium?" He looked at me, his eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. "Leo, lithium isn't just some rock. It's called white gold. It's the key component in batteries, for phones, for laptops, for electric cars. The demand is astronomical. A significant, high-grade deposit, especially one in a politically stable country. It would be worth a fortune. Not just thousands, millions, potentially tens of millions. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Northridge Properties wasn't after the land for a golf course. That was a lie, a cover story. They were a front for a mining interest. They knew, or at least suspected, that there was a valuable mineral deposit on our land. Their campaign of harassment wasn't just to get the land cheap. It was to get the land before anyone else figured out what was buried beneath it. I picked up the letter. My hands were perfectly steady. "My clever Leo," it read. "Now you know the real secret. Your grandfather found this deposit years ago. We were going to tell the world, but he got sick before we could. After he was gone, I realized what a dangerous piece of knowledge this was. In the wrong hands, this discovery would destroy this place. A massive open-pit mine would poison the water, scar the land, and drive away all the life. It would be the end of Coldwater Creek. They found out somehow. Maybe a stray comment from one of your grandfather's old colleagues. Maybe a public geological survey that hinted at the possibility. They came sniffing around. I knew I couldn't fight them in the open. I was one woman against a corporation. So I did the only thing I could. I hid the truth. I buried it, literally, in this vault. And I started my own quiet war, a war of attrition, to protect this land until you were old enough to take up the fight. This map is the most valuable thing I have to leave you. It is also the most dangerous. You have two choices now, Leo. A final choice. You can take this map to the highest bidder. With Mr. Albright's help, you could sell the mineral rights for a fortune. You would be wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. You would never have to worry about money again. Or, you can do what I could not. You can use this map as a weapon and a shield. You can use it to protect this land, to preserve it. You could establish a land trust, seek a conservation easement, and ensure that no one can ever scar this piece of earth. You could save this place. One path leads to wealth. The other leads to purpose. I cannot tell you which to choose. A cage of gold is still a cage. A life of purpose, even a simple one, is true freedom. The choice, as always, is yours. I love you. I believe in you. Gran. I finished reading and looked up at Mr. Albright. The map, the secret to untold riches, lay on the table between us. Northridge Properties had no idea we had it. We held all the cards. We could be rich, or we could be something else entirely. I sat in the sterile quiet of the bank's viewing room, the weight of my grandmother's final words settling over me. Wealth or purpose? A cage of gold or true freedom? She had laid out the two paths with stark, heartbreaking clarity. Mr. Albright was silent, watching me. He wasn't a lawyer anymore. He was a witness. I thought about the money, millions of dollars. I could do anything, go anywhere. I could buy a penthouse in a city, a fast car, a whole new life. I could erase every trace of the boy who wore state-issued jeans and ate scheduled meals. The temptation was a physical thing, a sweet, seductive poison. It promised an end to all struggle. But then I thought about the land. I thought about the old oak tree, the sagging porch, the smell of pine after a rainstorm. I thought about the quiet dignity of the house, standing firm against the years. I thought about Carol in the grocery store, her simple, welcoming smile. I thought about my grandmother, living a life of deliberate poverty, meticulously documenting every injustice, all to protect this place. She wasn't just protecting a mineral deposit. She was protecting a home, a habitat, a history, my history. What would I be if I sold it? I would be a rich orphan. I would be another in a long line of people who took the money and ran. I would have traded her legacy for a number in a bank account. I would have proven the world right, that everything and everyone has a price. I would have become the very thing she fought against, a big, loud, greedy force. And what would I have, really? A life of empty luxury, haunted by the ghost of a choice I was too weak to make. Her words echoed in my head. A cage of gold is still a cage. I finally understood. The money wasn't the prize. It was the final test. I looked at Mr. Albright. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were kind. He had guided me this far, but he knew this last step was one I had to take alone. There's a third option, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Mr. Albright raised an eyebrow. We don't sell the mineral rights, I continued, a plan forming in my mind, a plan that felt right, deep in my bones. And we don't just hide the map. We use it. We go on the offensive. I looked at the map, at the circled word lithium. Northridge Properties has been operating in the shadows, using harassment and intimidation because they wanted to keep this a secret. What happens if it's not a secret anymore? A slow, wolfish grin spread across Arthur Albright's face. He finally understood. "You leak it," he said, the excitement growing in his voice. "You don't just create a conservation easement. You go to the State Environmental Board. You go to the university's geology department. You commission a new, public, transparent survey based on this map. You get the land declared a site of significant geological interest. You tie it up in so much red tape, so much public scrutiny, that a company like Northridge wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It would be too public, too regulated. Their entire business model relies on secrecy and bullying." "Exactly," I said. "We beat them at their own game. We use the truth as a weapon." "It would be a long fight," he cautioned, though his eyes were gleaming. "There would be legal challenges. They wouldn't go down easy." "I have time," I said, "and I have a home to fight for." I started to carefully roll up the map. "I'm not interested in being rich, Mr. Albright. I'm interested in being worthy of her." The drive back from Claremont was different. The silence wasn't tense, it was focused. We had a plan, a mission. When we got back to his office, he immediately began making calls, his voice resonating with a newfound fire. He contacted a professor he knew at the State University, a renowned environmental lawyer, a journalist at the regional paper who owed him a favor. He was building a coalition, turning my grandmother's secret into a public shield. In the weeks that followed, the world changed. The story of the Coldwater Creek lithium deposit became a small local sensation. Scientists came. Journalists came. The quiet little town was suddenly on the map for a reason other than its slow decline. Northridge Properties, faced with public scrutiny and a united front of legal and academic experts, quietly withdrew their interest. Their power was based in darkness, and we had flooded the field with light. They vanished like vampires at sunrise. The fight isn't over. There are still hearings to attend, foundations to establish, legal frameworks to build to protect the land in perpetuity. But for the first time in my life, I have a fight that is mine. I live in the house now. It's no longer a dusty museum or a temporary shelter. It's home. I've started to repair the porch. I've planted a small garden in the same spot where my grandmother grew her roses. Some days, I sit on the porch in the evening and watch the fireflies, just like we used to. I'm not haunted by ghosts anymore. I'm kept company by memories. I never opened the other boxes in the pantry. They are still there, a silent library of my grandmother's life. I know that one day, when I'm ready, I'll explore them. But for now, it's enough to know that they are there. It's enough to know that I have a history. My grandmother left me with something far more valuable than money or minerals. She left me a home. Not just a house, but a place in the world. She left me a purpose, to be a guardian, a protector. She taught me that true wealth isn't about what you own, but what you're willing to fight for. She reframed my story, not as one of abandonment and loss, but as one of protection and legacy. And that's a lesson that I want to share with all of you. Maybe you've been handed a story you didn't write. Maybe you feel trapped by your circumstances, by what other people have told you you're worth. I'm here to tell you that you have the power to pick up the pen. You can find your own locked pantry, your own hidden truth. You can choose the harder path, the one that leads not to easy riches, but to a life of purpose. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if it gave you a little bit of hope or made you feel a little less alone, please consider subscribing and becoming part of this community. Share your own stories of choosing the harder path in the comments below. I read every single one. Because we are all guardians of something, and together we can protect the things that truly matter.